Ask the Therapist. That's me, and I'm answering your questions about anxious attachment and fear of abandonment. Mended Light. So I put it out there to you in the Mended Light community, asking what you want me to answer about anxious attachment, fear of abandonment, and struggles with all that sort of stuff. So here we go. Hi, Jonathan. Hello. I have identified myself as having an anxious attachment style. I really struggle with not expecting things from the people closest to me to make me feel better about myself. Are there some strategies I can use to prevent myself from getting in this mindset? Yes, absolutely. So let's do a quick review of what anxious attachment is. Anxious attachment comes when you are young and your caregivers are inconsistent. Sometimes they're loving, sometimes they're distant. Sometimes they're judgmental and harsh, sometimes they're withdrawn, sometimes they're playful. And I mean beyond the bounds of maybe normal, because I feel like all parents are loving, sometimes they're upset, sometimes they're distant, but where it gets to be, you don't feel safe. You don't feel seen. You don't feel wanted on the level that you need to be securely attached. When that happens, an anxious attachment forms. And children in this circumstance often fall to people pleasing. That's who they grow up to be, is people pleasers, because as a child, they really wanted their parents' love and affection. And because it's inconsistently given, they're trying to figure out the formula, right? They're trying to figure out, what do I need to say or do so that mom and dad will love me and want to play with me and want to spend time with me and comfort me when I'm sad. And they often internalize, well, mom is nice to me sometimes, so if she's angry, it must be my fault. Or if she's withdrawn, it's my fault. Then we believe that our parents are good, which most parents are. Even in these cases, they're doing the best they can. But we believe our parents are good, and our parents are safe, and so I must be the problem. We don't have the maturity to see otherwise. And the thing about this mentality is, if I'm the problem, then I must be able to fix it. Because if I'm not the problem, and the problem is my parents, then that's truly terrifying, because there's no way to make it better. At least that's the underlying emotion of it. So we grow up with an anxious attachment style of please love me. Please see me, please value me, please want me. I will say what you want me to say. I will do what you want me to do. I will be who you want me to be, just so I can belong. And I will sacrifice my needs, my wants, and who I am. And I will change who I am just to get that love and affection and belonging. I relate to this because for a long time, my attachment style was anxiously attached. Curiously, it wasn't because of my parents. I had a very secure attachment with my parents. My parents were very loving and accepting and warm and all the things you would hope parents to be. But I was intensely bullied, socially mocked and shunned and teased and relentlessly harassed and emotionally abused for the sport and amusement of my peers from about the age of 5 to the age of 15 during these very formative years. And what I learned about myself during that time is that I'm unlovable. It's not true, but that's what I believed. And because I believed, because of how kids treated me at school and because to an extent of how my siblings treated me at home, I believed that I was unlovable, and the only reason my parents loved me is because they were saints. Because they're so good to me, but that's not because of me, that's because they're so good. They treat me this well because of them. So I grew up anxiously attached, and that showed up in dating. Did that show up in dating in a major way in high school and in college, where I found myself clingy and willing to sacrifice who I was, change who I was, and I would chase people away because I was so desperate to keep them. Those are good times. So what can you do about this? Because the original question, I really struggle with not expecting things from the people closest to me to make me feel better about myself. I would say the first step is to recognize that loving yourself is not a consolation prize. It's not something you do because no one else will love you. It's foundational for being secure and showing up in the world, is developing a secure attachment with yourself. Some people are going to love you. Some people are going to see your worth. Some people are going to step on you, walk on you, think less of you. In both cases, those people are just showing you who they are. When you meet your own needs to start, then you can start loving people just because you want to love them without expectation of anything in return. But, and this is important, when you love yourself, you also realize that it's okay to ask for your needs to be met. The reason right now that you are scared to ask your loved ones to meet your needs is because you're afraid of rejection, sure, but also because you don't believe you deserve it. You don't love yourself enough to stand up for yourself and say, this is what I need. And because you don't love yourself enough, you're expecting them to love you and to fill the hole that way. And if you've been watching Mended Light long enough, you've heard me say, if you don't love yourself, you're like a bucket with a hole in it. And people can try and give you affection, but it will just leak out the bottom. So coming to love yourself will enable you not only to ask for it to have your needs met, but to be willing to say, okay, these people aren't mature enough, selfless enough, aware enough, or just have the bandwidth to meet my needs. And that's okay. I'm not going to hate them for that or where they're at in their journey. I'm not going to resent them because I'm not relying on them. I'm giving it to myself, and now I'm searching for the people who, when I give them love, they reciprocate. When I say, I want to meet your needs, and here are my needs, they say, that sounds great, let's do that, and then they show up for me. So that's my answer to that one. But those of you who are watching, what would you say? How would you counsel someone with an avoidant attachment style to get out of that mindset and be okay to ask for their needs to be met? Next question, how to deal with abandonment and betrayal triggers in a relationship. They're two separate things, even though there's some Venn diagram overlap, right? Abandonment and betrayal. Abandonment is a form of betrayal, but not all betrayal is abandonment. So let's start with fear of abandonment. People who are abandoned often develop an avoidant attachment style. They don't want to get hurt. They've been left before. Well, sometimes they develop an anxious or disorganized as well, but for avoidant attachment style, I've been hurt before. I don't want to be hurt again, so I'm going to be a lone wolf. I'm going to isolate, and I don't need anything from anyone. And then avoidant, we just talked about, disorganized combines some of both. But if you've been abandoned, it's not the abandonment that's hurting me as much as what I believe that says about me. If I feel abandoned, or if I've been abandoned, what message am I internalizing? And I believe, well, they left because I wasn't good enough. They left because if I could just show up differently and be a different person, then they would want to stay. And let me tell you, I've worked with thousands of people at this point in my career. More often, abandonment has to do with a person feeling afraid. Afraid to commit, afraid that they're going to hurt the other person in the long run, so they're just going to get it over with now. Abandonment happens because of misunderstandings. Abandonment happens because of selfishness. Abandonment happens because a person doesn't feel worthy of the person that they're with, and so they go to do something else. Think of, if you're a movie fan, think of Deadpool. Think of Wade Wilson in the first movie when he just falls off the face of the earth and doesn't contact Vanessa for 3 years. And it's not because of her, and it's not because he doesn't love her or she's not good enough. It's because he's afraid of rejection, and he's afraid that he's not good enough for her. And if the other person did abandon you and pointed a finger and said, here's all the reasons why I left you, well, look at it and ask yourself, it hurts, it sucks, is there valid feedback there? Are there things that I can work on that will help me to be a better person and a better partner and do this better the next time? And owning that is not the same thing as saying I suck and I'm terrible. So making peace with, this is the decision the other person made. It's not the decision I wanted them to make. But not everyone who I invite into my life is going to be that person. And if I'm okay to be on my own, I can still want to have somebody on my life, but if I'm okay to be on my own and I don't need somebody else at the moment, I'm not going to cling to them like a life preserver. Because I like to say, if you're afraid of drowning in a sea of loneliness, you're going to grab a hold of whatever slimy piece of driftwood comes floating by. So you have to be okay to be on your own. Because if you're okay to be on your own, then you can gauge, do I want this person in my life or not? Because my life is pretty good, right? And you could say it's not about I need a man or I need a woman or I need a person. It's about, I want this person in my life. So that's how you deal with abandonment triggers. Betrayal triggers, honestly, that is an in-depth therapeutic healing process, recovering from betrayal trauma. Here at Mended Light, we have an online course called Healing from Infidelity that you would take in tandem with therapy sessions with a member of our clinical team, because it is so in-depth to go step by step through the healing process. This is a course that I went to a 3-day, 12-hour-a-day training with the Gottmans on healing from infidelity, and then got their permission to build this course and this program for our clients. And that is something that we have available. So I'm not really going to touch on betrayal trauma too much here, because I want it to give it the time it deserves. So I would encourage you to schedule a complimentary 15-minute call with a member of our team to talk about that and see if that's a fit for you. And the link should be here and also in the description. How should people with major anxiety move through situations that for most people causes minor anxiety? I have generalized anxiety disorder, and it's been hard figuring out how to navigate through it and not feel overwhelmed or triggered by said situation. The first thing to do in almost anything that we're dealing with when it comes to mental health or emotional health or relationships is to strip away the shame and the judgment. Alicia and I were talking about this the other day, that the things that we struggle with, our sadness, our anxiety, our depression, our grief, they're like mogwai in Gremlins, little furry creatures. They need to be taken care of. But when we add shame and judgment, that's like feeding them after midnight, right? That's like throwing them in the water. They multiply and they turn into gremlins. Our sadness, our grief, our anxiety, they become destructive and overpowering when we compound them with shame for feeling them in the first place or self-judgment for feeling them in the first place. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing weak about you or pathetic about you or wrong with you for experiencing generalized anxiety disorder. It is a human condition. So the first thing is to strip away the judgment and the shame. The next thing is to regulate your physical response. So you need to know for you what helps you when you are feeling panicked, when you are feeling anxious. For some people, it's anti-anxiety meds. For others, it's slow, deep breathing and relaxation and meditation. For others, it's talking to somebody and just venting and letting it all out so that they can get it out of their system and focus. So what works for you to regulate the physical side of things? And as you slow down your heart rate and as you slow down your breathing, assess for safety. Now, if there's a clear and present danger, assess for safety first and get out. But if you feel unsafe, but you can't quite put your finger on it, soothe yourself, and then as you soothe yourself, you'll be able to think more rationally, and then you can assess for safety. And if you're truly safe, tell yourself why. Here's all the indicators that I'm truly safe. And if you're not emotionally or otherwise safe, then you form a plan. What am I going to do so that I can feel safe? What steps am I going to take? So questions for you. What advice would you give for any of the questions that were thrown my way in this video? Or what questions do you have for me that this video prompted or brought up for you? Let me know in the comments below. What are you doing for the next 10 or 15 minutes? I've got another video for you to watch. It's called Safe to Feel Your Feelings. We need to give ourselves permission without judgment to feel what we need to feel. And I talk about in this video how to create the space to do that in your life. So that link is here somewhere on screen. Click on it, or it's in the description below. Until next time, folks, keep shining. We need your light.